We're talking about the first 10 pages of Living in the World While Waking Up, Pathways of Light course. And why don't you go ahead and tell me what your impression was and organically have our discussion.
Yes, sounds good. So it's funny, one of the main reasons I signed up for this class was that I've been struggling since starting and becoming a student for the past, I'd say, 2.5 years. This is the one aspect where I struggle, is trying to kind of be in the world with everyone else, but also keep in mind all of these other aspects and thoughts and kind of things that I'm supposed to be prioritizing, if you will, as I learn them and try to apply them. So that's the main reason I signed up for the class. And it's funny, I actually had an experience the week before the course started where I was out to dinner with girlfriends and because it became very, typical, I guess, in a standard setting, it was very gossipy and very, talking ill of other people. And it got under my skin. But then I also realized by getting under my skin, I went down a certain path as well, as like identifying as being not better than, but just like trying to differentiate myself from them, right? So when I started reading through the materials, it actually really helped, because the whole concept of allowing and understanding that everyone else, everyone is on their own individual path, and that, at the essence, at the core of it all, we are all one. So that's kind of basically has been my experience. And then just diving into the exercises in the first few pages has been hugely helpful.
It's interesting because I'm also doing, I do multiple binders at once because I have students, doing all different things. But I'm also doing the Song of Prayer. And it basically says, the course basically says your life is a prayer. And the prayer is kind of like a ladder. And everybody is on the ladder, but at different levels. So in the beginning, the lower rungs of the Song of Prayer is all about what can you do for me and what can I get out of this? And very, very self-focused around loss and having enough and being enough. But the fact that you were uncomfortable doesn't necessarily mean you're going down the wrong path or that you're being judgmental of them. You can just notice that you're being uncomfortable because that's your old way of being, and you're in the process of, it's kind of like you're on a boat and you've gotten on the boat and you're departing from the old port, but you're not yet to the new port. So, you can still see the people on the shore, or you might even miss some of the people and where you've come from, right? Just like we do
Right.
when we leave home. So you're just in the process of becoming. And I certainly will sit with people that don't share my perspective. And I've gotten now to a point where I notice what they're doing. I notice the reason they're doing it is because they have underlying difficulty with their connection with God. If it gets too overwhelming, sometimes I get up and I'll leave. But, I'm able now to just kind of sit there without doing anything. So you'll eventually get there as well.
Good to know.
Yeah. But that doesn't always occur for me because, in our closer relationships, in our partnering and our family relationships and friendships, there's still so many lessons to learn. And that was one of the things that I really liked, that you're in this like lesson plan, and that every difficult situation that you are experiencing has already been healed. It's already got a solution to it. And if you're struggling in that particular lesson plan, you haven't really let go of the egoic concept to see what Holy Spirit has for you in terms of healing.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So if you're conscious of those particular, I call them roadblocks or, bumps in the road, then that's a great flag to basically, at that point in time, release and let the Holy Spirit take over, right?
Yeah. And what it constantly says through the Course in Miracles, and we know this isn't easy. Don't expect it to just be an easy walk in the park, not because it's difficult, but you have such an attachment to your ego concepts. But just keep reaching out and keep in your practice. And as time goes on, it will thaw.
Can you speak more about, in the first 10 pages, there's a lot of, in the workbook, there's a lot of mention of time,
You're right.
but that time is not the time that we quote unquote know, but it's in fact being used in a different way. Can you help me understand that?
Okay, so the Course is written on various levels. And it can be very, very metaphysical, and people can get mired down into things that really aren't helpful. And it says that itself, that you don't really have a body, and that the body's just an illusion. But, we obviously have a body that, we're already in the dream. So there's no
Right.
fight. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life trying to let go of the fact
Right.
that I don't have a
Right.
body. So we are in time, but time is an illusion. So the only thing that really asks us to do is be really present, because all you have is this moment in this present moment. There is no future and there is no past. There's just now. So it
Okay.
collapses time. In terms of time, the best advice that I could tell you from my perspective, the best thing you do is just make yourself very aware. So when we get mad at people, we often go back into the past. He always does this. This is how he always is. Or we have an expectation that was developed in the past that's not being lived up to. Or we jump immediately to, oh my God, this is happening now. Now what's going to happen? What's going to happen to me? I'm so afraid. So the future is tied to fear, and the past is really about anger and attack. If we can just be aware of what's happening in the present moment, and in the present moment is how we reach out to God. God is now. So if we
Okay.
can start focusing on being very aware and mindful, then we can start developing a deeper sense of God.
So the statement in the workbook, it says, we still continue to live and work in this world, but we now use time to release ourselves from ego identification. So that's basically, like you're saying, when random things pop up, to understand that it's either that future association or that past association that's drumming up those emotions.
Right. That's correct.
Okay.
Neither of which
Okay.
exist. It also said, it's really not helpful to try to punish the ego, to push it away or grind it down. I see so much of that in many, many different practices. Oh, it's my ego and I have to overcome it, or I've got to smash it, or I got
Right.
to
Right.
disassociate with it. We are both light and darkness, and so God embraces us as we are, and we need to learn to embrace ourselves as we are. So when the ego pops up, it's not like I'm doing it wrong. It's just like there's this little child, this confused child that's coming forward, and embracing the ego and saying, no, sit down. You're confused.
Okay. That's helpful, because I have a tendency to do that as well. I think it's just, I
Yeah.
get angry or irritated or whatever, fill in the blank emotion wise, right? About, how do I quote unquote get rid of this kind of thing, and
Don't
looking
get
at
rid
it
of it.
as right. But I look at it as like an enemy, right? And
Right.
certain, like when you get that lens, so that's helpful.
Because that in itself is unloving.
Right.
It's
Okay.
really, really unloving. The whole concept is about what is the most loving thing I could do. In our present moment practice, what is the most loving thing I can do? What is the most loving thing I could do for myself first? And what's the most loving thing I could do for everybody else in the situation? We don't always feel that way.
Right.
You know, we feel like we want to go smack somebody,
Right.
right?
Right.
But we realize that we have that and it's going to lead to more suffering. That's why it's helpful to have a physical component to your spiritual practice to release that emotion, to have the emotion, to sit in the emotion, and then let it dissipate. Kind of like steam in a pressure cooker or an Instapot. I guess no one uses a pressure cooker anymore. Everybody uses an Instapot. Sometimes we can't open the container while there's still so much steam in it. We have to let the steam dissipate, or we have to find a way to release the steam because there's so much emotional charge in it.
So is that, I mean, so in theory, as we do the spiritual work, you would recommend having some degree of a physical outlet, whatever that is, whether that's, so I've read a lot about tapping. I've used tapping from time to time, but are there other methods or approaches?
Well, you know, everybody's different. That's what I'm going to tell you. Everybody is different. Everybody is unique, you know, and not everything
Right.
works for everybody. One thing that I have found helpful for myself is the breath work. That's not for everybody. One thing we know is that when we no longer have a breath, we are no longer in a physical body.
Can you
So,
explain that?
well, if you stop breathing, what happens to you?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Right.
Breathing is essential. Everything breathes.
Right.
And if we, what is that breath? What is it? Where did it come from? The minute you inhale, you have life. And the minute you take your last breath, then you're no longer here. And to me, I think of that breath as God or the Ruha or spirit or the universe, or
Okay.
that is,
Yep.
you know, whatever it is for you, whatever that higher
Yep.
power is for you, something
Yep.
is breathing you. Now, do alcoholics have breaths? Yes. Do criminals have a breath? Yes. Do loving people have a breath? Do terrorists have a breath? Do holy saints have a breath? We all have that one thing in common. I think of whether you're happy or you're sad, you have a breath. And to me, I think of that as God because God is ever present, even when we're not breathing
Okay.
us.
Right.
So
Okay.
what I do is I just come to that breath without even thinking about it, just focusing on the inhale and the exhale. The Jews had a word for God, a symbol for God, because they, in the Old Testament, you really couldn't even speak the name of God.
Right.
And so they only used consonants in the Hebrew language to describe God in the Torah. And the consonants were the sound Yah, Ha, Way. And the word was Yahweh. But if you notice when you say the word Yahweh, your lips never come together. They never come together because God's name cannot be spoken. And it sounds very much like our breath. Yahweh,
Wow.
Yahweh,
Huh.
right? We
Yeah.
don't even put our lips together. That means to me so many things. It's like I have no control. I have no say in what God is. I can just breathe it. So that's why the breath work to me is, it came to me in my experience that we all share the same breath.
Right.
And
Okay.
that's what
That's
God
helpful.
is. Yeah. So when you get really angry at somebody, one of the thoughts that I think that kind of corrects it for me is I have a breath, they have a breath. God is in us both. Whether that person recognizes it or not, God is breathing him or her. The other thing that I thought was really helpful was the review workbook lessons on pages 82 through 91. I used to do this a lot when I get really, really upset. I still do it. I go through the lessons that are outlined on 82. Nothing I see means anything. I have given what I see all the meaning it has for me. I do not understand anything I see. These thoughts do not mean anything. And I am never upset for the reason I think. I'm upset because I see what is not there. I see only the past, and my mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. I see nothing as it is now. My thoughts do not mean anything. You see?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's trying to get you out of the past into the present moment. And that was the other lesson that we kind of gravitated around in these first 10 pages was the whole thing, the whole concept of not knowing anything. You don't know.
Right.
You do not know. You've never known. The only way to know is to see through Holy Spirit's eyes. And to do that, you have to let go of your grievance.
No, I was just going to say that I've definitely struggled with that in the past, but that was a helpful reminder that with this exercise too.
You know, I deal a lot with people with trauma. Trauma is pretty much always about the past
Right.
or the present moment if still trauma is going on. And, you know, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of abandonment, there's a lot of self-esteem issues and survival issues all wrapped up with trauma. And so there's a lot of energy around trauma. And that energy is stored deep down in the body. And so we think of our container, that pressure cooker. So what you do is you see people, what are you going to do with that energy? You've got to first release all that anger, release all that fear, release that survival grasping. And that's a process. First, we got to release
Okay.
some of the steam. And then we have to start questioning who we are now in this present moment. But a lot of people can't, they're so terrorized that they can't
Right.
even become present. And we have to allow that. Everybody's in a different level of their release work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The ladder analogy you gave earlier was hugely helpful. That, I mean, that I like to have that kind of imagery in my head that helps me understand. So,
The ladder is not this present life. The ladder is eternity. We have some people that are in such trauma that
right.
they are the product of abuse and that means something about them. They will never surmount it in this lifetime. In this current lifetime, which is just a blip on eternity.
Right.
But they will surmount it on the ladder of eternity. So we have to allow people to have their struggles because through their struggles, they will reach out, hopefully, and find a higher power. And until people, all people, realize that they're powerless against their ego and their addictions, they'll suffer. And there's no way we can convince them or tell them. It's something they have to experience for themselves. And so another thing that we see a lot is, and I hear a lot in my practice, is I've got to speak my truth. I got to speak
Yeah.
my truth,
Yeah. Yeah.
which really has nothing to do with truth, right?
Right.
It's you have an experience that you have bought into. And when we speak our truth, truth is love. It might be an experience that we need to express, but if I come to you and start, you were my mother and I was your child and I was abused, my truth isn't calling you up one day and saying you are a terrible mother and you tortured me and I hate you for it and I hope you rot in hell. There's my truth. Well, where's the love in that?
Right.
That's not, first of all, that's not loving towards yourself because that's not really what you are. But also, we have to take into consideration, where is the other person on the ladder? Can they even hear the voice of love? Are they even capable of loving someone else or behaving rightly? When we speak our truth, we have to really get present to, does this person have the ability to love themselves and love others at the way I expected them to do? And just because someone gave birth to you on a physical level doesn't make them qualified to be a parent.
Right.
Just
Right.
because you're in a relationship doesn't mean that person is qualified to have a loving, intimate relationship. But we expect it.
Right. Right. Absolutely true.
Do you have any other questions? Or
I'm looking through here.
this was so juicy. There was a
Yeah.
lot in this first 10
Yeah.
10 pages, so many concepts that are really,
Yeah.
really deep spiritual concepts. Basically, they wanted you to first realize that nothing's going to come from the way that you are living. And what I see a lot is, I'm spiritual, I'm spiritual, spiritual, but there are parts of my life that, well, of course I'm not going to forgive that person because they were a bad person, or that person's a mass murderer and therefore they need to be punished, or they're not in my cultural or religious, so they're going to hell, but I'm
Right.
spiritual.
Right.
So one thing we learn is, what is true is always true, and there is no segmentation to love. And as long as we have segmentation, or people that we see that are not deserving of love or that need to be punished, we ourselves have limited our ability to access to the Holy Spirit. Well, there was so much I liked here. Was the discussion of what your purpose is. And your purpose is to wake up and hold light. And by waking up and holding light, you encourage other people to wake up and hold light. And what I hear a lot is, oh, I can't be a teacher, God. I don't know it all. Well, neither do I. I take my lessons and I have my experience. And by having my experience, I can bear witness, if you would, to other people. I know what you're talking about. I was there too, but I have found a different way, and you can too. And so a lot of people say, no, no, I have to, I have to get a certification, or I have to go through a seminary, or I have to take a class. And I'm not saying those things are bad, but I'm saying it's very dangerous to think that that's what God is.
Right.
God is your personal experience of peace and love and hope. And each one of us must really open up to that experience to share it. Oh, here it is. It's on page 26 of the teacher's manual. I just think it is so powerful. Are changes required in the life situation of God's teachers? Changes are required in the minds of God's teachers. And this may or may not involve changes in the external situation. Remember that no one is where he is by accident, and chance plays no part in God's plan. There are those who are called upon to change their life situation almost immediately, but those are generally special cases. By far, the majority are given a slowly evolving training plan in which as many previous mistakes as possible are corrected. Relationships, in particular, must be properly perceived and all dark cornerstones of unforgiveness removed. Otherwise, the old thought system has a basis to return.
No, I was going to say that I think that to me has been one of my primary realizations over the last couple of years, is realizing that my relationships are my teachers. So with my kids, with my significant other, it's been an eye-opening experience. And like you said, then I feel like there's certain lessons that I don't get the first few times, that they keep coming up again and again, and to the point where I actually now perceive it. I was like, oh, here I go again. So like it's like a common thought pattern or something, and I'm like, yep, clearly I haven't let that go yet, kind of thing. So
Yeah, and then the second paragraph says, as the teacher of God advances in his training, he learns one lesson with increasing thoroughness. He does not make his own decisions. He asks his teacher for his answer, and it is this he follows as his guide for action. This becomes easier and easier as the teacher of God learns to give up his own judgment. The giving up of judgment, the obvious prerequisite for hearing God's voice, is usually a fairly slow process. Not because it's difficult, but because it is apt to be perceived as personally insulting. And I have to say, this is so true. Because as you sit with other people, because you're a teacher of God and you have your own students, and you begin to have discussions of truth with them, you'll see someone lean forward and get really, really offended that you won't reinforce their painful thought system. They'll get really, really angry, and occasionally they'll get very insulted.
what do you mean by that? Can you expand on that?
Okay, so I have a client that was married for many years and has a couple of children. And he came out of a bad marriage, or a marriage that he deemed as bad. And he cannot forgive his ex-partner because she is a quote unquote narcissist.
Okay.
So in our discussions of allowing that the mother of his children, his ex-wife, to be who she is without judgment is very, very hard. And
Okay.
occasionally he'll lose control and say, yeah, but what she did was wrong and she doesn't deserve that whole
Yep. Yep.
need for punishment, or the need for being validated in her hurt feelings, creates such a friction in her relationships that it keeps her from moving into a deeper healing. Do you understand what I
Okay.
said or no?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
We can listen and we can have compassion, but when we start buying into the suffering of someone else, we really start moving away from this connection to God. We don't have to understand. I have my roommate from college had one son, and she completely adored that son. And he was killed in an automobile accident in January of this year. And she's completely devastated, as could be expected.
Right.
The way it happened, and just the magnitude of the loss that she's enduring has been, I don't want to say difficult, but it's been on my mind a lot, watching her suffer, understanding her suffering.
Right.
And the only thing that has brought me peace is I don't know what God's plan is. I don't know. And I'm not even going to pretend I know. But I believe God is love. So even though that this situation appears to be quite unloving,
Yeah.
but we
Yep.
don't know the magnitude of the situation. We don't know what death is. We really don't know until we experience it. My prayer every day as I think about her is, God didn't make a meaningless world, and I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what her relationship with her source is. I don't know what God's plan for her is, but I do know God is love. And it's the only way that brings me peace.
That's actually really helpful. So we all have friends that have various experiences in their life. So that's a great way to approach it, because you want to be compassionate and you want to be a good friend, but it's also easy to kind of go down that path with them, right? Of feeling sorry and trying to, the wallowing and stuff. So that's helpful.
Yeah, and so to be completely bluntly honest, we always superimpose ourselves in that situation.
Yep.
If that was me, I don't, oh my God, I would hate to suffer like that.
Yep. Yep.
Although the Course talks a lot about special relationships, we do have attachments. A mother does have an attachment to her child. I mean, I think that's the ultimate special relationship. We also have an attachment to our body. That's also a special relationship
Right.
that's very difficult to really get over. What I can do and what I do know for sure is all the love, the outpouring of love and support that she has been shown. And even though I personally can't change it or do anything or say anything, I can sit with her in her grief while she's experiencing her grief and love her. That's always an option. I frequently get this too, is my son or my daughter or my best friend is battling addiction and they've relapsed, and what can I do? I'm so sick about it. Well, we can always love them. Or the other thing that I get is a breakup of a romantic relationship, which is a whole nother story. That's a whole big binder to do in itself, this whole
Right.
thought of romantic relationships. But, the person feels this tremendous loss in their life. But have you really lost that person? You never lose the experience of them. And quite frankly, everything's going on in your mind. When you have an experience of somebody, it's merely a thought and you never lose those thoughts. I can remember the good times. I can hold the good times. I have not lost those good times and I can tap into them anytime I want. I'm still joined in those loving thoughts.
Interesting. And that's okay. And that's something that we judge, right? As a kind of from a higher level sometimes.
We judge everything.
Right.
Just, know that you have no neutral thoughts. You're
Right.
constantly scanning your environment, saying this is good, this is bad, this is going to kill me, this person is a jerk. We're
Right.
constantly looking at our surrounding, judging everything, and then wondering why we don't have peace.
Right. Well, and that's for me, like that active exercise of trying to well, control and or kind of look at it with the different lens of allowing versus judging is been in and of itself has been quite a exercise for the past couple of weeks. So
Yeah, it's very freeing. Can I love and like myself despite what you think of me?
yeah,
That in itself is the most powerful thing you can do for your self esteem. Can I love and nurture myself and take care of myself and offer myself a good life despite what you think of me? Can I allow you to have your opinion? Because an opinion's just a perspective. And if I was going to change a perspective, I would have to change everything in your mind. And that's a big
right,
job because I'm busy trying to change mine.
right,
I also find that as an attack. A lot of people want to think they're victims, but it's really an
yep,
attack thought because I want you to think of me the way I want you to think of me. And if you don't have that thought of me, then I'm going to separate from you. I'm going to be angry at you. I'm going to not want to look at you. I'm going to
yeah,
run
and that's
away from you. Yeah.
very easy to in the work world, in your like relationships with your parents. Like I that's one thing I've become more conscious of too is just I think the exercise you posted about why are we doing this course and are you doing it for you? Are you doing it for others? That kind of thing, and looking at all of those different lenses with which we approach other people in our lives. And for me, it's been eye opening, especially from the work perspective, coworkers, and from like parental perspective because of all the expectations that we were raised with, if you will.
Right. I find this work so essential for my life because life still goes on. People are still getting sick in my life. People are
Yep.
dying.
Yep.
People are having horrendous things happen. And it's the only way that I can maintain a peaceful existence.
Yep.
So I keep it very close. I breathe it in as much as I can over the day. What happens is a lot of people dabble in this and they get bored with it, or their life starts chugging along, and their life gets quote unquote busy, and they leave it. And then I get the phone call from somebody that says, "Oh my God, my life is a disaster. Please help me. I've gone backwards." And no, you haven't gone backwards. What I think about this work and our faith and our ability to maintain peace, I think of it as Christmas lights. I keep my Christmas lights lit all year round. I never take them down seasonally. Because if you take your Christmas lights down and pack them up and put them in the closet, when you need them, you're going to have to go looking for them.
Right. Oh,
Drag
I
them
like
out.
that. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so my biggest advice, and don't believe me, I always say, don't believe anything I say. Find out for yourself. But
Right.
my perspective is find your Christmas lights. It's always exciting when you find them and light them up for the first time. You have the faith of a child, a kid at Christmas, and then keep them lit. And keeping them lit, you need to put a certain amount of energy into that.
Yep.
Are there any other questions or anything else?
No, this has been great. Like your nuggets have been very helpful. Like what you said, God is our personal experience of peace, love, and hope. That was awesome. And just like you said, there's so many juicy tidbits. For me, it's just been like kind of scanning my brain throughout the day, trying to apply them all. And that's where I mean, I know the work comes in, but also like you kind of wake up and see all of the different places where, you know, you're either stuck to a story or married to a story or whatever, and you need to let it go. So just applying it has been hugely helpful.
So one of the things that I really also want to make clear before we end this discussion is that you are a teacher of God, and your life is a prayer. Your life is a prayer. You might not think you're praying every minute of the day, but you are. What you're praying for might vary. Maybe you're praying for vengeance, or maybe you're praying for deliverance, which are really not prayers. Prayer, a real prayer, is what we have to begin somewhere. You know, we have to
Right.
begin on the bottom rung, and we might pray for certain things in the beginning. But as we go up on that rung, on that ladder, prayer is really being in God's presence as one. And we radiate that joy and that peace to the people around us. So you are teaching, your life is a lesson, and right now people are having experiences of you. What would they say about their experience of you in terms of joy, peace, and hope and forgiveness? So a lot of people shy away from this whole thought that I'm a teacher of God. Well, you are. Everyone is.
Right. That's a great perspective. Your life is a prayer.
So, you know, a lot of people really want to change the world, or do make an effect on the world, or make a big splash on the
Right.
world,
Right.
or be the voice of our generation, or whatever the heck it is. You must start with your own life. If you're called to stand on a stage in front of 2,000 people, that's great. But that's no less than the impact you'll have in an intimate relation one-on-one with people. Because some people you'll affect. You'll really be a change agent in their life. That's not what we do. We teach what we live. And
Right.
that's a big thing too. A lot of people like to talk about it, but when it comes to applying it in their life, that's why we have a lot of this turmoil in teaching organizations, you know, spiritual organizations, because people are so disappointed that people are teaching you this but not living it. which
Right.
in itself should not be a disappointment, because if I taught you how to ride a bike and then you found out I rob banks, does that mean you don't know how to ride a bike? Does that negate your knowledge of riding a bike?
Hmm. That's awesome.
So sin is anything we put before God, our false gods. And sin is also when we put anything before our true relationship with the one true God, then we are really doing an act of violence against ourselves. So sin always has two components. One, we've put something or made something more important than our relationship with God. And two, that it creates self-sabotage for us.
I'm just
So
writing that
if
down.
I fall in love with you and we have this tremendous relationship, and then for some reason the relationship's over and I'm so heartbroken and I feel devastated and I can no longer go on with my life, and I just go into this depression and my life starts unraveling. I start drinking, gaining weight or whatever, losing my job. That's all against myself. It's a thought about me not being who I am because you don't love me. Well, you're a human being and you judge, and your ability to love is conditional. So when I place you, my whole value in whether you love me or not is really making you my God, which is going to be a slippery slope. Well, nothing else?
No, like I said, this is, like you said, this is a very juicy course, I have to say. It's all the nuggets that I've been looking for, but I think the key is just applying it kind of consistently every day, in engagements and interactions with other people. So,
What I think is so wonderful about being involved in this, first of all, it keeps me in my practice. But second of all, I get to meet people like yourself that are so hungry, and so your intention is so pure, and your ability to really make an impact on the world is so high. I'm so grateful to have met you.
yeah, no, this is, when when you posted the ad for on Facebook, I was like, finally, yes, what I've been waiting for.
Well, that's
Because
good.
it resonated so deeply. So yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Well, good. And so I look forward to talking to you soon.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much, Lori.
Okay. See you.
Take care.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye.